Welcome to Solink in the Cloud, where we are talking to industry leaders about topics that matter. I'm Kathy Langley, Senior Leader of Asset Protection with Solink. Solink's mission is to protect people, places, and profits, which is why we're bringing together thought leaders within the loss prevention, asset protection, and retail security industries to share their expertise and passion. So hello, ladies. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm always excited to talk to industry leaders, but this group of amazing AP leaders, female leaders over the generation, which is what we're going to be talking about, is experiences, mentorship, what you have gained from the industry, what you've given back to the industry. So again, just super excited. I really appreciate your time. I know you're all crazy busy. So thank you very much. We'll start with some introductions, and Michelle, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, my name is Michelle Jones. I've been in this industry, AP, since 1985. So Kathy, I am so excited to be here myself. I have been for a handful of companies in and out of AP, but I would say the majority of my time has been in asset protection, and I can't wait for it today.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Kath?
Hi, everybody. Catherine Penizzato. I've been in the industry what seems like forever. I'm representing the oldest generation here. And I'm excited to be a part of this. I have been on both sides of the loss prevention space and operations space, both as a practitioner and then as a provider. And now I have founded my own services consulting business. I'm excited to be with all you ladies today.
Thank you. Lauren.
Hi everyone. Lauren Linsenbach, and I work for currently Retail Business Services. So we are a part of the Ahold Delhaize banner supporting 5 different grocery stores currently on the East Coast. And I've been in the AP industry since 2011 in various roles, starting as an analyst and current position as a manager of investigations and analytics. But excited to be here with a group of ladies and excited to speak on behalf of the questions that we get asked.
Thank you, Lauren. Elena.
Hey guys, I am Elena Kring, thrilled to be here with y'all. Currently, I am a retail partnership manager for Aura. So I've stepped over to the solution provider side. I actually started my career in 2007 in law enforcement, but I've been in retail now for almost, 10 years. So it's crazy to think that total in this industry, just meeting all these awesome folks and being able to be a part of something. So I'm really excited to be here with everybody today.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. The one thing I want to say before we get started with some questions is this is not a, them versus us conversation, male versus female versus anything. It is really women coming together to talk about changes in the industry, experiences, and ultimately our goal continues to be to support one another, right? Regardless of gender, we're here to support every individual, but we are the minority in the AP industry, and that leads to probably some unique stories and unique conversations. So with that being said, Kath, let's start with you. Give me like 1 or 2 of, you would say, your most memorable lessons that you received either from a leader or a mentor.
Yeah, well, there's been many, but one of them, when you're talking about women in loss prevention, one that I think is really important was to use your female traits, our intuition, the way that our perspective on things, the way that we approach things, those things are beneficial. And that's together with a group of people, you bring in a different flavor. And I think that was an important piece. It didn't have to pretend to be somebody else. It could just be who I am. That was an important lesson. In the same breath, though, the other important lesson was you may be judged differently because you are a female, and certain things that might be an elbow wink for a man would not be an elbow wink for a woman. For example, I'll use conferences as an example. As soon as you're having fun, this is what I've always taught my teams when I manage. As soon as you're having fun, you leave. You're always on, you're always working. As soon as you realize you're having a great time, get out. You don't want to be part of a problem. You don't want to witness a problem. Just get out. So those are a couple of lessons I would say were impactful and kind of carried through my whole career.
That's good. You know, and the other thing is I'm not sure, again, we're all in different generations here, but the newest generation then coming in, are people still talking about those things, right? Are people willing to like speak up and go, hey, when you're starting to have a really good time, it's time to exit, right? I don't know. Is that a conversation today? Lauren, let me go to you. Any lessons that you want to share from a mentor or just the industry?
Yeah, I would say I guess the most memorable lesson, and I'd say it's kind of like the career path that I've been on. And as a female, as a young female coming into the industry, I would say the biggest lesson that I think we all should carry with us is that, people believed in me. And that was my biggest inspiration. I mean, it didn't matter to me whether I was a female or what have you. It was that I had leaders that influenced and motivated me, and it aspired, the future and where I wanted to go. And I would say, as it's not a specific scenario, but I would say because you had leaders that were able to influence me and saw, bigger things for me, that really put the roadmap, ahead of me. And that's really kind of, the most memorable thing to me is I had leaders that spoke up and they gave me that nudge of saying, hey, you can do more. And that was the most exciting thing for me because, people may look at me and say, hey, she's a confident female. She knows what she wants. And we all have our own self-doubt. And I think that's the biggest piece that we don't always, recognize as leaders, where you've got people with tenure and people that are confident in this industry. Everybody needs that nudge sometimes, or that, hey, you could do this, or believe in them. And maybe that strikes a chord in a different path for somebody. So I would just say that from my experience with the leaders that I've had so far is that, because they believed in me, I believed in myself even more. So that's the positive side that I've experienced so far in the industry.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Elena, anything to
I was
share?
gonna say, I know too, with what Lauren said, it also helps you build on your own self-confidence. I think that's something as women that you feel empowered when you know that someone believes in you, but then you have to look in the mirror and say, but I believe in myself enough to do this and to do it well. And that's why I think it's so critical to surround yourself with women in the industry that are strong and talented and that kind of have maybe something that you know that you don't, so you can say, hey, look, I'm going into this new challenge or this new role, or I'm working on this project. I know I'm really good at this, but you're really good at that. What advice can you give me? What can you share? How have you been successful? How have you worked those things? And I think that helps, at least me personally, build up my own confidence, but then know that I've got people surrounding me that also are cheering me on, but that can hold me accountable when I'm working towards bigger things like in my career, in my life. And just learning to have the, I guess, just being able to be transparent, to be a little bit vulnerable, to let your guard down. I think as women, that sometimes is a struggle, but when you've got good people around you that believe in you, it really does help you build that confidence to go further in your career.
That's awesome.
It's
And I think that, go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, it's so funny how all of you are talking about confidence. That's one area that I've struggled with my entire career. And the last company I worked at, I actually had a boss who I was vulnerable, right? Shared with him that I struggle with that confidence. And he's like, Michelle, I picked you. You're the best person for this job. And you have the seat at the table. You need to take that space. And he was very direct with me. And he goes, if you don't take the space, somebody else is going to. And that was the final conversation that I needed to be done with the confidence. I have that seat at the table and I need to take it. But it was amazing to hear from all of you that we seem to have that in common with confidence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Advocating
share a
for
quick
others
story.
seems to be easy, right? For us, advocating for others, we can champion others all day long, but
All day long.
champion ourselves or advocate for ourselves, still struggling. I will always struggle with that. It's one of those things.
And I will say, just a note, anybody who loves to read books to just try to self-reflect, Confidence Effect for the listeners, the book Confident Effects is awesome. And Elena, just a note on your point, to find a partner, so to speak, of like, hey, you can help, if I help you with this, can you help me with this? Like banking off of each other's strengths. I can remember going to a conference years ago, and historically, small talk for me was like an issue. If I'm going to have a conversation, we're going to go deep, we go fast. And that's not always welcomed, right? So I'm like, I need to learn the art of small talk. And she needed support from a data analytics point. And I'm like, we are in. Like, I mean, I was like on her hip, doing small talk, listening to the way she engaged. And then we sat down with a laptop. Like, so there's so many ways to win in this, right? So many ways to like support one another and again, win together. So, all right, we're going to move on to Michelle. Question for, what is like one of the largest hurdles in your career? A hurdle or a challenge that what was it? How'd you overcome it?
That's a great question. And I would have to say, I think it's called mom guilt today, but raising my children and being in an industry where at the time, having a work-life balance wasn't popular. Like it wasn't anything that you talked about. I mean, you were looked at like who was the first, who turned on the lights and who turned off the lights, right? And anybody that knows me, my children are the love of my life. Now my grandchildren are the love of my life. And having that mom guilt, and if I could give any advice to anybody, is don't have that mom guilt. There is no reason why, number one, you can't love your job and love your family, and to be able to have that balance. Like it's empowering now for me, to be able to speak about my family, speak about my kids. And I think my team knows to distract me, ask me how my grandkids are. And that will take me to a completely different space. But 20 years ago, you didn't talk about your family. You didn't talk about, hey, I have to leave to go to my kids, baseball game or softball game. Like you couldn't have those conversations. And so that was probably one of the biggest hurdles I had. So thank you for asking. It was just that mom guilt. And I hope I can help others with that.
Yes. And if anybody
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Kath.
Michelle, I'm just curious, did you ever have to make a career decision because of that? You had a something offered to you because you're progressing, and then you have to pivot.
I've never shared this out loud, Catherine. So it's like, I'm so glad that you asked me that. So my stepchildren, their mother passed away. And I was a director of asset protection, traveling all the time. And those kids needed me. Like they just lost their mom. They needed me. And I took a step back in my career for about 10 years. And did it hurt me climbing up the corporate ladder? Absolutely. But I knew that was far more important. At the end of the day, like where you are, outside of work was far more important to me than that. And I'll never forget my boss looking at me going, what do you mean? I was like, I can't be, like, I could travel, but I can't be on the road Monday through Friday anymore. And to this day, I know it was the best decision ever. So, thank you for asking me that, Catherine.
Yeah. Kath, what about you? Like a major hurdle, challenge? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, there's been many, but that actually, when Michelle was talking, that's what I was thinking about. I have this thing right here. I would love to grab a hold of it, but then I also have this family commitment, and I just can't do it right now. I have to like swallow a little pride for the moment and know that I will be able to get back into the game. And it was a challenge for me because I was driven, hungry for it. I was really driven, but I was also driven to be present for my family. So I just found that to be challenging through my career when I was having to make those decisions.
Yeah.
Me first.
I had a scenario where, I was offered discuss another, job opportunity. And, I can remember saying, I have a small young child still, and what I referred to at the time as a high maintenance son. And there's one person that could keep him between the rows. Like there was one person, and it was mom. And it's like, if I'm gone, who knows what that, who knows what that looks like. And, now, a decade later, I'm like, wow, the man that he's become is amazing. And you made the right calls, but they are challenging times. There's no doubt.
I do think it's an important lesson. And more and more, it's kind of balancing for who's doing what on the home front and that kind of responsibility. But I do think it's important for people to know it's okay. Like, it's okay to do what you need to do, like what you really feel in your heart is the right thing to do for you, for your family, for your career, whatever it is.
Right.
There's no shame in doing what is right for you. You're in the right place at the right time, and the decision you're making is the right one, and you will come back around and something will be even better than what was
Right.
in front of you at that moment.
Taking that risk is hard, though. I think about just leaving a company that I was super happy with, even like to take that risk to try something new or step out of my comfort zone or move up a level or two. And you're like, oh my goodness, it's like that gut check. Am I making the right decision? Am I doing the right thing for my family, for myself, for my spouse, for everything? Because that there's just this massive set of challenges that are going to come with it. But I think that it's easier now to try to step out than it probably was for you, Catherine or Michelle. And that's where, just listening to y'all talk, I'm so thankful that women like y'all, even you, Kathy, like that have paved the way for us to say, I want to try something different, or I want to do this, but I can do this like with my family, with all of the things, because I'm sure that, like y'all shared, that wasn't the case, or that you felt like you would have to suffer professionally for that. So it is hard to step out and just do what is right, not only for yourself, but for your family.
No, that's
Yeah,
great.
just to mention real quick, the you guys have children, and that was that internal guilt, and I do not have children currently. But what really hit home with me, and Kathy Langley, I've been driven. I was always that, raise my hand, I'll travel, I'll go take whatever position is there to grow in my career. And I actually took a position out in Colorado, and I was like, I'm leaving Pennsylvania. I want to experience life. And, I was out there for 2.5 years. And when you get a phone call from your parents and it's not news that you want to hear, to me, it's like, forget the career, I'm going back home, and I want to be with my family. And that, you only get one set of parents, and that really, I guess, like, we all mature, and I guess life hits you. And that really, for me, it was like, selfishly, I've always been driven with my career, and I'll do whatever it takes. And I still am that way a little bit. But my priority was my family, and that, I think that also is a guilt that we kind of all hold, and should have or could have done something different. So.
No, thank you, Lauren, for sharing that. And I can remember reading, I can't remember the actual name of the book, but I can remember the sentence. The actual title of the chapter was, "You can have it all, just not all at the same time."
Yeah.
Right. So often we tell our kids, we tell our younger, or any of our children, you can have it all, you can have it all. And that is true, as long as we realize it's probably not all at the exact same time.
Yeah.
Right. Again, I truly believe we can have it all. You can raise a family, you can take care of your parents, you can have great health, you can do it all. But there are times in your career and raising a family, parents aging, et cetera, where you do have to make those strategic decisions. And I think that's where I didn't really have it on my list to talk about, is like building that support system, right? That support system of people that can really like just chime in and help you out. I mean, these women here are part of my support system. At any given point, somebody could get a call and just like, I just need to talk about something. And I think that's critically important. So thank you all. Thanks for sharing that.
As I'm hearing that, I remember back during that time, I had all men that were working for me, maybe a couple of females. And one time I had to fly to Texas. I was living in Atlanta. I had to fly to Texas and back on the same day to be at my daughter's softball game. And I remember making that decision, sharing it with my team. And he said, Michelle, thank you for being the leader that you are, because you don't make me feel guilty, for making those decisions. So, like it's not, Kathy, you had mentioned it earlier, it's not gender, like men feel the same exact way. But I think the way I led and I was open about it and let my team know what, like it made them at the time, because again, in the 90s, I don't want to put a time, but during that time, you really didn't talk about your families. Like it wasn't, the popular thing to do, but I did, because that's who I am. And it allowed my team to be able to also make those decisions.
And I think you're right, Michelle, and that whole, like, it took me, growing up in the industry, years to become much more of a transparent leader, right? I historically, I might be going back, I don't know, a few decades here, but that leader that was like always, like when you were like always buttoned up, always on point. Everything was always perfect. Inside, you're like, I'm a hot mess, right? But you, on the outside, you were always like, everything always appeared to be perfect. And with raising, 3 children, like that just wasn't the case. It couldn't be the case. So, but becoming the transparent leader seriously helped me grow and helped others to go, oh, this is okay. And you were one of those people that showed that, like, leading by example, right? It's critical. So, all right, I'm going to move on to Lauren. You actually just gave an example of this, of a time when you raised your hand, like somebody said, oh, I need somebody to do this. And you're like, boom. But then you're like, oh, I don't even really remember what they just said. I'm just immediately raising my hand, right? So, Elena, you have an example of that, of like, I'm just raising my hand, I'll figure everything else out later.
Yeah, when I worked at Ulta Beauty, I had the opportunity to start the organized retail crime program, and I will never forget my boss at the time coming to me and saying, "Hey, I really think you would be great at this." And I looked at John and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I've done law enforcement. Yeah, I understand this, but are you sure that, like, you want to, like, task me with this? He's like, yeah. And I said, you know what? I'll do it. And I will never forget that flight home from Chicago being like, what in the world did I just agree to? Like, this is going to be so scary. And then I remember talking to him the next week, and he's like, listen, back to what we talked about. I have faith in you. I have confidence in you. You're going to do great. We're going to be here to help you. You tell me what you want to do, and then, like, we'll definitely mold and shape it. And I think having people in your life that, I always give the analogy, like, they're just your guardrails, but you have the freedom and the flexibility to go 5 miles an hour, 550, you get to kind of set your own journey, set the pace, and they're just kind of there to keep you from going crazy and guiding you in and out. It was one of the best decisions I've ever made, because to have the opportunity to see that establish itself, grow, look at how successful the team is now, just even though I'm no longer there, it just gives you that sense of pride that I'm thankful that I stepped out in faith in myself. I'm glad that someone else had faith in me to do the job, but I'm even more fortunate that there were people to speak truth to me, to hold me accountable, to give me feedback. And I think too, as a female, sometimes, like, we tend to get our feelings hurt, like, oh gosh, I didn't mean to do that, or this doesn't feel good. But the reality is, as long as we are being pushed and we're being molded and we're being encouraged the right way, it really does make you a stronger leader, but not only within, like, your work realm, but also family, friends, all of it. I mean, I think the lessons that I've learned through my retail career and law enforcement have really shaped me into the person that I am in a positive way. I think I give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm more transparent. I'm way more vulnerable, I think, than I've probably ever been. I'm not scared to let people see me in a certain light or a certain way, because to all of y'all's point, it just gives credibility to what we're doing and where we're going. But yeah, never be scared just to give it a whirl and give it a shot, because you're not going to fail. There's people that are going to be around you to help you and encourage you and support you. So raise that hand, but just be prepared to deal with all the crazy.
That's right.
With it.
And ask questions, right?
Yes.
So how about Michelle? Any example of your, like, oh yeah, I'm in?
Oh yeah. So I'll never forget, I was like 28 years old, right? Never led a big team of people before. And I was flown into Atlanta and I was promoted. I thought, oh my gosh, what did I do? Back then you didn't have cell phones and computers, right? Like, you just got, the phone call and then you had the meeting. So I flew in, I was promoted to the director. And I was leading people that were, and I was like, absolutely right. Like I said, yes. But inside I was like, oh my gosh, do they know me? Like, hey, this is Michelle Jones. Like, are you sure this is the right Michelle Jones? I was leading people who were twice my age, all men. And I think back now going, I can't believe I even survived that. Like I had zero leadership experience at that time, but similar to everybody else, I had, people who believed in me. I asked a lot of questions. I was very transparent, would partner with HR on it. Like I had a really great mentor as our HR director. And, it was an amazing opportunity, but I'll just never forget. I had literally no background to be leading at this level, with this level of people. But somebody believed in me, and they set the guardrails for me. Right. And we figured it out and we won as a team. Like the following year, we were the #1 team, with improvement with shrink and with investigations. And it was pretty amazing, but there were some bumps in the road, lots of learning lessons, lots of leadership things that I pass on to people today. But yeah, it was one of those opportunities where I raised my hand.
That's awesome.
Michelle, I think we're living the same life here. It's like, that was my story too. It was terrifying.
But yeah.
So
I actually had one of them say to me, like, what are you going to teach me? Like, you've only been, and I didn't know what to say. Like, I didn't know how to respond. Today, I would know how to respond. But back then, I'm sure I turned beet red, had no idea how to respond to him. But anyways, it all worked out for the best. And I'm so glad I made that decision.
that's
In law
awesome.
enforcement, they say it's 99% bluff and like 1% execution. And I feel like there's some days like you walk into things, you're like, all right, game face on, like I'm gonna get this, even if you don't. But that was one of the things that they used to always joke about in Asian school: 99% bluff, 1% execution. So as long as you walk in there confident, you're gonna be fine.
And that I can remember, having a very young team at one point and sending them to meetings maybe for the first time. And I was like, if you walk into that room like you own it, you're halfway there. Like everybody will listen to you. Don't just walk in like you own it. So, but you're right. We do fake it sometimes. Hey, so Kath, can you give me an example of a female role model that you had, either in or out of the industry?
So many, this is probably cliche, but my mother had her own business that she started at a very young age and raised 7 children. So she truly was kind of like setting the path for the rest of us. Out of 7 kids, 7 of us had our own business. So she kind of set the path for all of us to kind of be entrepreneurial and figure it out. We were all customer centric. Even my oldest sister, who went to nursing school, finished and said, why am I being a nurse? I think I should be a doctor, and just went back and, kind of led the way. So I learned a ton of stuff from both my parents, who each had their own business and continued their business for 60 plus years. So those were my models.
Yeah, that's great. Lauren, female role model in your past.
Well, lucky for this group, my role model is actually on this call with us. So Kathy Langley has been the first person that brought me into this industry, again, as an analyst, and she got to see me, grow and experience different positions. But, initially, Kathy, it was her grit and her personality, and she was the go-to for so many things. I mean, it didn't matter if it wasn't an analytical question, but it was like, who to call Kathy. and for me, I admired that. And it was just like, I saw how hard she was working. I saw the relationships that she built. And, in the back of my mind, I was like, if she can do it, I can do it. And I've always appreciated Kathy and her engagement and her passion for the industry and just for people itself. So as cliche as it can get, Kathy, it's you.
I think that's true for all
A
of
lot
us.
of us.
Call Kathy.
Thank
need
you,
some
Lauren.
guidance.
I do remember you guys, we all have these people that we interview, right? And you're like 15
That's
seconds, boom. Lauren was one of those. And I remember when she came back to me at one point, it was like, I don't know whether or not I should take this promotion, and I got to think this out. And I'm going to, and she's balancing everything. And I was like, well, you have to. And she's like, why do I have to? And I go, well, because when I interviewed you X number of years ago, I said, 4 and 5, like inside of minutes. And she goes, what's 4 and 5? I said, four positions in 5 years. And I said, so if you take this next promotion, like I'm actually right then. She was like, oh, okay. And I go, you got it. She's like, done.
If Kathy says do it, I'm doing it.
That's right.
So, but I think that's, one thing that keeps coming out over and over again is how we need to support one another, encourage one another, right? Just
being available.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So let's talk about, Elena, I'm going to go to you on this one. A time when you were judged, or you felt judged, solely based on being a female.
Okay, so like I shared, I started my career in law enforcement. I was 22 years old. When I became an agent. I was the only female, like within my division at the time, like in my third of the state, I guess. And a lot of departments that we would go to talk with didn't even have females on their police force at all. So then you've got, like an older generation of folks, and then you've got me who's literally like bebopping in, 16 years ago, 22 years old. And so there were actually meetings I would walk into, like on broad scale cases and things like that, where they would make the comment like, oh, Special Agent Barbie's here, or, who gave you a gun, or I can't believe that like they hired you. I mean, those would be things that would be like physically said in meetings and around, my peers and other people in, law enforcement. And what I learned so quickly was that's really not their fault. They had just never really had the exposure to working with women in that capacity. But I will tell you, I'm thankful for that, because it helped me gain a very thick skin and to be able to show them through my actions and my words that I was capable, I was competent, I was trained, I could do the job. And, going back, even still testifying on old cases or things like that, you run into those people and they make the comment, wow, like you've come so far, you've done so many different things. And I'm like, yeah, I have. And for me, it's like that strong, steady voice in my heart that's like, you're good, like you've worked hard to get where you are. Like I went through the police academy just like everybody else. I went through, agent school just like everybody else. But it's almost like knowing within yourself that you should be there because you've worked just as hard and proven yourself just as much. But yeah, that was definitely a thing. I mean, now I know it's probably even different than it was in 2007, with women in that field. But I think that that's sometimes where our insecurities come from, because people say things or they do things out of not knowing or not like having that context. And so it's something that you slowly start to like build that confidence within yourself to say, dang it, like I deserve to be here and I'm going to do it and I'm going to do it great and I'm going to prove them wrong. And I feel like that really set the foundation from like 22 to 26, 27, that like, I'm going to get it done. And I feel like that tenacity has helped me progress throughout my career. But yeah, it was trying at times for sure.
Kath, anything to add to that?
I could bring it from a different perspective with the same type of group. The first time that I got into loss prevention, I was in operations in grocery, and our entire loss prevention department was comprised of retired senior investigators for the state police. Mm-hmm. And I would bring them information out of operations that I thought was pertinent to what they did. And they brought me in because of my different perspective and my different approach. And that I was really, because I was a female, they gave me an opportunity to work in that group because they recognized that all of their hard edges didn't always achieve the goal. So their admissions after I joined went up because they had somebody approaching interrogations a little bit differently, and their ability to identify loss went up significantly because they were used to reactive, and I was more from a proactive point of view. So that both scenarios apply, but I had the benefit of somebody recognizing the value of my gender
That's
back
awesome.
then.
That's a good balance. And I think that just goes back to, whatever the scenario is, just own it, right? Like, yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry, Elena, were you going to chime in there?
I was just going to say, like, women and men complement each other so well because we're built so different. And like what men have, we don't, and what we have, they, vice versa. So there's such a good complement with men and women, like working side by side. And I just think it's awesome that people recognize that it doesn't have to be like you're going up against each other. Like it's this constant competition. Like we can draw from each other and just bring more to the table. So I think that that's a super cool story, Catherine, because it's so true. Like we've got that softer finesse side, sometimes like when they're more direct, and as long as we can help each other get to the end goal, that's what it's all about anyway. Everybody wins.
Right. And I think that, that leads to the opening of this is not a them versus us conversation, right? This is just talking about experiences but also being those role models for new females, younger females in the industry, or somebody, in our current generations transitioning over to the AP industry to say, it can be done. And here's a group of people that are absolutely we're on your side, right? We're on your side and here to support you. So let's transition to board of directors. Elaine, I think you and I were the two that had a conversation about like our board of directors. So can you, and I don't, this may be a foreign term to some people. I mean, we all know boards, but a personal board of directors. Can you talk just a little bit about like what that's meant to you?
Yes. So I had a fantastic female role model slash mentor when I worked for Ross. Her name was Glennis Harris, and now she is like super high up at Giant Eagle. But one of the things she told me is learn to manage your manager. And then the second one was have a board of directors. And at the time, I didn't understand what that meant. And she shared that you need to surround yourself with people that are going to challenge you, that are going to encourage you, that are going to give you sound advice, and that are going to make you better, like not only personally, but professionally. And so I worked really hard to seek out people that were, well above my pay grade, well below, in the middle, personal, professional, but people that I know would be comfortable speaking truth and calling me out, like if I was way off, or giving me that encouragement if I was spot on. And I still, like Kathy, for example, like I still call Kathy when I'm like, oh gosh, this has happened. What do you think? There's just people all throughout the industry, like even making decisions like in roles where, hey, I really think this is where I want to go. Have you done this? What was your experience? Am I way off here? But having that group of people that are truly willing to invest in you, because I think your board of directors really does invest in who you are. It's made all the difference in my career. And I still call people constantly to say, I need help, or am I crazy? Like, can you talk me off the ledge? Whatever that might be. But having, I'd say probably 5 or 6 really close people that make you better and challenge you is just so critical to your success.
That's great. Michelle, do you have a board of directors?
I do. And I've had a board of directors on and off in my career. And I'll never forget one time in my career where I kind of got lost in that. I got promoted really young. And at the time you were expected to dress a certain way. You were expected to speak. I think even today's world, like you, right? You have this, this corporate talk that you have to do, right? And I wasn't leading with my heart anymore, right? Like who I am, like any of you who know me know I have the biggest heart in the world, and that's how I lead. And I am who, that just makes up who I am. But I was losing that. And she's, was a dear friend of mine, and she looked at me. She goes, "You are becoming boring, Michelle. Like you have lost yourself. You are becoming boring. You're not pushing back anymore. Look at you." And I look down at myself and I'm like, oh my God, you're right. I stopped wearing earrings. I cut my hair short. Like I started becoming who I felt like everybody else wanted me to be.
I
And
have chills.
Yeah. And if it wasn't for that board of directors, if it wasn't for her saying to me, you need to knock it off, be
Yeah.
back to being who you are, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I don't take myself serious. I laugh all the time. I get results, right? So so anyways, it was my board of directors who really was a big pivot in my career and helped me not lose myself and become somebody who I wasn't. And I'm the happiest person in the world. Like, I love the way I lead. I love who I am. I don't take myself very serious. If I mess up on a word, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. We're not doing brain surgery, right? Like, that's another thing where we're not doing brain surgery. It's about how you act in the moment and, treat people and inspire them and, help them be the best that they can be. And again, I lost it for a few years in my career, and I'm so grateful for her to this day.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, as I was dressing today, I put on these earrings and I was thinking about Lisa, like thinking, she's the one, like I would
That's right.
not be wearing my earrings if it wasn't for her.
And I do think, as you know, as females coming up in the industry, there were some expectations. I can remember being told one time, like, oh, if you don't cut your hair short, no one's going to take you seriously. Like, there are those statements that people make that we give way too much credit to. Like, they're just saying that they don't necessarily even mean it. It's a statement. So I think it's a reminder, number one, words are important, but number two, you have to assess the source of that and decide how much weight you're going to give it. How much credit are you going to give those words, right? So, Kath, let's talk for just a minute before we wrap things up here on personal brand. I'm a huge believer in this is your personal brand. You come up with those couple, those 3 words. What has personal brand meant to you? How have you used it? And do you have anything that I'm going to say, like, how do you hold yourself accountable to that?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Loaded one.
There's a lot of things,
Yeah.
obviously, that go into somebody's personal brand, but for me, it was always about mixing humility and credibility at the same time. I had to be humble because I needed to know if I was on the right path. I never assumed I was correct. I learned early on by making those mistakes when I was, adamant about something and then either wrong about it entirely or wrong in my approach. It didn't influence. I learned how to be humble and be credible, and one beget the other. That's how it worked. So those things have carried me through my career.
That's awesome. I think the other thing when we talk about, people's words and they're important and then you assess them, I can remember back in the day, somebody describing me a certain way and it was somebody I respected. And I'm going back probably 30 years. And I went like, ooh, wait, time to reassess. I didn't even think 30 years ago, I knew what personal brand was. Right. But I knew I didn't want any of those words tied to me. So it was like that constant like reassessment and evaluation and then growth. So which is so critical. So we are going to have to wrap things up here. Most of you probably know I usually end a podcast with a start, stop, and continue personally. But because we have a large group here, I think I'm just going to go with just any closing words you have. This is all about the community. It's all about the asset protection community, helping and supporting others. So I'm just going to go around and see if anybody has any closing words that, either comment or a book that you like that you would like to, reference or anything that you have coming up on the horizon. And Michelle, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think be authentic you. Don't ever lose sight of who you are. And again, I think, Kathy, you said it best, that feedback that you hear from others, take it, right? Listen to it, but just never lose who you are and believe in yourself.
Yeah, that's great. Catherine?
A lot of what we talked about today is journey related. I realized too late for myself that it's really all about the journey and it's not about some big goal. Goals are great, but it's really all about the journey and enjoying the journey in the moment that you're in and you're where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, that's huge. I'm with you there. I'm a little late learner on that one too. Lauren?
Yeah, just something that Michelle had mentioned kind of resonated with me, that you get comfortable sometimes, right? And you're on a path, you're passionate, you're on a roll, and then all of a sudden you can take advantage of that. And I've gone through it personally. And I would say the most recent book that I've read that kind of gave me that gut check and, Lauren, get yourself back onto where you were, kind of thing. And I know what I'm capable of. And, again, we kind of all need that inside, spark. And the book is called I Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And I don't know if you guys have read that book, but it's about, somebody that trains and runs, and he was given all the excuses why he couldn't do it, and he proved everyone wrong, even himself. And they always say that when you think that you're ready to quit, you're only at 40%, and you hit that 40% and you think you can quit, you're nowhere near quitting, and you've got so much more inside of you. So for me, that book was an inspiration. I could read that book within 3 days. You can't put it down. So if you haven't read it, it's a wonderful book. It's motivational and it's inspiring. So if you're down, that's the book to go to for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah.
Elena.
I would just say be unapologetic about who you are and what you want, and go after it, but be kind to others in the process, because I think sometimes we forget that everybody's dealing with something, but just be unapologetic about who you are, and the people that accept that and encourage that and want to see you succeed, they're the ones that'll stick around and support you. So just kind of keep a temperature on who's around you and who are you keeping beside you to help you kind of make those decisions? And are you surrounding yourself with the right people to help you be successful in where you want to go? I think that that's something the older I've gotten, who do I want at my table? And I shouldn't be begging for a seat by others. And so that's something personally and professionally I try to keep in mind. But also, I would say that any single one of the people on this podcast today, like if you are a lady, if you're new in your career, if you're trying to figure it out, we would all be happy to chat with you or talk with you, text with you, whatever. So reach out on LinkedIn, find us, and we'll be more than happy to encourage you through.
That's awesome. Thank you. And you just took my last line, so I appreciate that. So yeah, no, I was just gonna say, connect on LinkedIn, like seriously, connect in and then message people. You can share contact information. And again, this is, this group of ladies and in our industry in general. I mean, there are many of us who have found ourselves, in the need of the support of the industry to find like our next gig, right? And everybody in this industry has your back.
Yes.
Right. So an amazing industry. And we are all here for you. We're on your side. And so again, ladies, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you and respect everything that you bring to the industry.